Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar on improving quality and efficiency with the Industrial Internet of Things. Just for your information today, we are recording the webinar and you will all receive a copy of this in your inbox within the next day. I'm James Cook, Inside Sales Manager at InVMA, and alongside me today I have two gentlemen. Simon, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everybody, I'm Simon Garby. I've been working in the continuous improvement and OEE arena for the last 18 years or so. Over those years I've been involved in many implementations around OEE solutions and systems. And as a result of this, Gemba as a company, we've moved forward slightly from, instead of just providing systems that measure, we now provide a focused solution that delivers. And we mainly achieve this by combining data and the doing and actioning of data.
Thank you, Simon. And on my other side, I have John Hill with us today.
Thanks, James. My name's John Hill. I'm the Business Development Director of InVMA. My background is from engineering, originally with the Ford Motor Company, before, frankly, I went to the dark side and started working in finance with data and analytics, using my engineering practices and control theory there. Recently joined InVMA, I say recently 2 years ago, to become the Business Development Director. My responsibility is to make sure that we understand what a client needs and build the solution that fits those needs. InVMA itself is a value-added reseller of ThingWorx and Device Authority. Basically, the world around us is getting more and more connected, and we as InVMA are the architects, the builders, and the operators of the resulting solutions for those Internet of Things.
Thank you very much, John. So over the next hour, we have Simon and John who will introduce you into the Industrial Internet of Things. But they'll also be guiding you through understanding how value can be created from new technologies that are already available today. Then Simon will guide you through how Gemba have deployed technology into their continuous improvement methodology. And following a demonstration of elements of Gemba's approach, we're happy to answer any questions that you may have. Moving on from there, we will finally talk through the final steps and the next steps for you that we recommend for developing and implementing a successful solution within your business. And for those of you who are interested, we have an agenda. So without further ado, I'd like to pass over the baton to John.
Thank you, James. So for the next 10-15 minutes or so, I'm going to go through some of the opportunities that we see that the Industrial Internet of Things could provide for you and your company. What's this all about? Fundamentally, when we look around us, the physical and the digital worlds have converged. We're surrounded by cars, by equipment, even our phones that are now fully connected to the internet. Things are designed using computer systems, right the way from modelling the products, through to modelling the lines, through to putting them through to making them into reality. Once they've been produced, we also measure how they perform. The real reason to think about this is if you had devices and things that are in the real world, if they could speak, if your production line could speak and talk to the rest of your processes, what would it say? The impact of this sort of physical and digital conversion is starting to be felt across all of our worlds. So in the area of manufacturing, the product itself is becoming smart and connected, be that from, as I said, the cars, industrial equipment, through to, in these cases, from business to consumer, tennis rackets. And what it's being done is to use to extend the offering around a product to make it smart and make it more sticky, and also give rise to subscription revenues for the customers. But it doesn't stop there in the product, it's also moving into smart manufacturing, which we'll speak more about today. So how are these products actually produced and the data and information that comes from those lines. But similarly, we're also looking as well, the Industrial Internet of Things and the Internet of Things are affecting where those products are used. So not only is it for the consumer who's bought the product, but also getting information from around them to start to understand how we can manage our infrastructure better and the places where we work, whether that's from smart cities to indeed even fields where we're producing our crops, through to the work sites where we all go to work. And sort of finally, really, the fourth point here is bringing together the idea that we can also service, so having information about how a product is being used in the field, or indeed how our line or machines on our lines are performing, give rise to connected service and maintenance opportunities. So the impact of physical and digital convergence is covering those sort of four main areas. Let's talk a little bit about the manufacturing environment. Well, across the world, we're hearing that these labels are being given to this adoption of the new technologies, be it smart manufacturing in North America, through to Industry 4.0 in Europe, to Made in China 2025, which is mainly out of Asia. But the key thing here, out of the $1 trillion economic opportunity that we've got from IoT over the coming years, is that they reckon 33% from McKinsey Global Institute reckon that 33% majority of this value will come from the factory setting. So it's quite an important element of this part. But where does this really come from? What does this technology enable for operations? Well, if we look back, we started off with the Industrial Revolution, where it was all about power generation and using power to deliver, to deliver improvements in efficiency, through to the invention of the assembly line, which actually initially was the disassembly line through the slaughterhouses in 1870, through to Henry Ford in the early 20th century with the adoption of the production line. In the 1970s through to the late noughties, we were able to start to use programmable logic controllers, PLCs, and we started to use IT and automation, mainly around serial interfaces where data was sent between and to different machines and triggering events and work and coordinating work across the production facility. But from 2010 onwards, a big change has started to happen where more of the internet type of technologies have started to be adopted into the environment of the manufacturing plant. The adoption of internet protocols and the extension with IP version 6 in 2012 enabled us to have virtually unlimited number of IP addresses connected to the networks. And the consequence of that is that we're now getting to a position where you can start to network and bring together all of these machines and devices so that they can talk to each other more effectively. As I said earlier, if your devices, machines or production lines could speak, what would they say? So manufacturing, where are they? Where are they starting on this journey? Well, discrete manufacturers are starting to pursue IoT initiatives. From this IDC presentation, you can see that about 66%, two-thirds, are actively pursuing the industrial Internet of Things initiatives, but only 40% of those have even begun a pilot. And in process manufacturing, we can see that, again, two-thirds are actually pursuing initiatives. But in that case, again, just a smaller percentage are actually taking that forward. So where do we see the opportunities? Where is the opportunity in here, and what is this technology being used to bring forward? Now, the key advantage of the industrial Internet of Things is because these devices, sensors, etc., are being used more in the consumer market, and with the volumes that are associated there, we're getting a significant price reduction in the cost of sensors, devices, and things that can be connected to the Internet. We're getting a significant reduction in the cost of communications, and we're getting a significant reduction in the cost of bringing that data together. Which leads me on to this slide. This, for some of you, will be recognised as the ISA 95 model of the different layers of data and different layers of systems that one would find in a factory. And what you also see added onto the bottom of this ISA 95 model is the idea of also adding in logistics, suppliers, and environmental information into the model. And what we can see here is go from the lowest level, which is about production assets and materials, what are we using to create the value in the manufacturing environment, through to the sensors, instrumentation, data collection layer, which is all at sub-second control level information. So this has been engineered to be able to deal with what is real-time information or very, very near real-time information. Then we have a level above that, which is being very much adopted, which is about equipment and process control. So using that data to trigger work down the line and indeed across the line, including, literally how conveyor belts start, stop, etc., that type of thing. Up to the next level, which is manufacturing operations management, which is about how are we actually performing across the factory do I trigger work to get parts to line? How does that work? Then a layer above that, where you've got business systems. So these are things like your MES systems that you find across the plant. And then less adoption, we're finding more governance and planning systems. So how do we decide what is being produced at any certain amount of time? When is it being scheduled, etc. So those are different layers of the ISA 95. And what we're finding is that the problem that this has got is that people are looking at the different layers in isolation. They're not considering the impact of potentially, for example, some interesting instrumentation data on the performance of the line in the future. So what we're proposing and what we believe is the value and some of the manufacturing opportunity with the Internet of Things and the industrial Internet of Things is, rather than focusing on and trying to rip and replace these layers of information, is actually to adopt and build IoT-enabled next-generation systems that can use the data and produce it in a much more role and process-based, and deal with the environment where no manufacturing facility is the same. Every manufacturing facility is different, and the requirements through the supply chain, logistics, and indeed for the environment of workforce are just different. So what we're talking about here is using the current systems and processes, augmenting them with other sensor data, connecting them to other logistics systems, for example, those of your suppliers, or indeed through to your customers, and then producing role-based applications that are suited to the individual so that they can do their work more effectively. So the individual themselves does not know whether he or she is working in looking at instrumentation data from the line, or whether they're looking at the planning system. They just want to know what the implication is of this potential downtime on their production plan. So that's the sort of thing that we're trying to get to. So that's one key element of what we're seeing on the industrial Internet of Things. But not only will it be involved there, but it'll also transform across the business. So as we start to look at where this data about things, as I said before, if your assets or production facilities could talk, what could they say? How would that help you elsewhere? So if you look around the organisation, in service, very clear opportunity for products in service, being able to service them remotely, being able to service them by connecting and providing automated service, particularly in the area of firmware updates, etc. Customer self-service, providing them applications so they can self-diagnose and self-repair. Predictive service, being able to identify when items, lines, or machines will start to go down so that you can service those and stop the consequential loss. Or indeed, changing your business model to being fully product as a service. So instead of selling a capital asset, selling the outcome of that asset, be that, for example, for a compressor, potentially air as a service, be that a production, be that a gas turbine, turning into power as a service. But also it can impact in sales as well, where, for example, you can start to look at market and lead generation by seeing how your asset is being used in the field or your product. You can start to benchmark the performance of the product across customers and also in their uses. But also you can start to use, again, if the asset could talk, what would it say? You could start to upsell, cross-sell, and automate replenishment. And what I mean by that is, if you've got consumables that are associated with your products, then it can automatically replenish, driving sales. And it also offers you new offerings, new markets to be able to offer this more type of service. But coming back to Industry 4.0 and the factory, by connecting to the machines and using the data from them already and the other systems around them, you can start to do condition-based maintenance when you can identify where you believe that a problem may happen in the future, and you can mitigate against that by doing maintenance prior to a problem occurring. You can do sensor and data aggregation, where you can start to understand how your lines are working, how your machines are working, and fix those. And you can start to use the data more in manufacturing operations intelligence, which is understanding why you had problems that you may not have realised you hadn't before. Similarly, continuing in operations stroke engineering, you can start to design for continuous innovation. I'm going to be talking about that more today. You can start to look at usage-based requirements analysis, and you can start to look at how your production lines and also your products are performing in terms of quality and how they're performing against design. And even the finance, the bean counters that I was for quite a while, even we would have some usage from this, going from usage-based billing to subscription services to warranty management, but also using this information that's coming from your production lines to identify in detail how much it is costing you in terms of wasted capacity, what is the cost of quality, what is the cost of your availability, and what is the cost of your current productivity, and understanding that in more detail so that you can focus your investment on the areas that are going to give you the biggest return. So in the words of leading manufacturers, if you look at GE and their brilliant factory, their whole mantra is, look, let's get connected, let's get insights, and let's get optimized. Let's optimize what we're doing. They've currently got 530 plants in total as part of their plan, and 75 of those have already been rolled out in 2016. For Airbus, Factory of the Future, they say its future digital technology will be introduced everywhere in the factory. And similarly for Denso, they see more of a linking the 130 factories at home and abroad by 2020 so that they can see and compare the performance of their different factories across those environments and also integrate into the operations and processes. So, in summary, basically, the opportunity of the Internet of Things is really only restricted by our imagination of how we can use the data that we're getting and actually taking some action to improve the way that we're working. How can we use data to trigger work in other processes and systems? And with that, I'd like to hand over to Simon Garbett from Gemba to take us through a use case of how we're using data from things for people to change the way they work.
Okay then, guys. So as John just said, Gemba, we gather data from processes and machines. That's what we do. I dare say that these days, especially with the Internet of Things, that's the easy thing to do. Sucking data out of machines and processes, we get this wealth of information. And over the years, as I mentioned earlier, we've come across many situations where gathering the data is only part of the obstacle to drive improvement in activity. So in this example or this slide we have in front of us, we can see where we have Gemba, we pull data and suck data out of processes, whether that be manual, automated, and we then calculate that data within our SQL server. So we use Kepware to pull information from the PLCs. That gets transferred into our SQL or Gemba SQL database, where we do a lot of processing and activity around the data, making it presentable, if you like. And then using the ThingWorx platform and InVMA, we were then able to create an application or a store app that allows us to visualize this data in a very easy and effective manner, but then also drive continuous improvement and action management off that data. So as I've said before, the easy thing is getting the data, the difficult thing is doing something with the data. So the next few slides I'm going to talk about are why did we develop with InVMA and on the ThingWorx platform? Well, based on our experiences, one of the biggest problems we find with companies is that bridging the communication gap between the shop floor and the boardroom. So the boardroom have got very clear strategic views on where they want to go as a business, how they want the business to grow in the future, demand, capacity, investment, all that kind of good stuff. And the operators on the shop floor, the people on the shop floor, delegates and associates, need to deliver improvement and efficiency to be able to make that happen or to visualize that plan. So how do you plug the gap? So the reality is we work around an effective framework of action. So team members, the people on the front line, they're the guys that are doing the activity. Those are the guys that are also best placed to understand what the issues are with the kit and the equipment that they're working on a day-to-day basis. We then have the supervisors and the line leaders, and these people are very focused around delivery and reacting to what's going on at this moment in time, and how do we meet the plan, for example. Then we have our production managers with the day-to-day, so target-driven. They need to understand the trends, what's happening with stock levels, what's happening with product flow and velocity, and they need to steer the vision of the senior management team. So, like I said, we've got the strategical view, the market trends, the profit and loss, and how do we go to market with our next version of product. So all these people need to be able to work together. And one of the biggest issues around that is bridging that gap or closing the gap. So using various meeting structures, whether that's short interval control, whether it's daily and shift change meetings, or whether it's even weekly production meetings, meetings are designed to bridge that gap, and we all do them, but it's how effectively do we do them, and how do we use data to drive real-time action that's meaningful and going to move the company in the right direction. So based on our understanding of that, the escalation of actions, issues and ideas is necessary. So again, key points, every meeting should have a structure. Guys, I'm not teaching you to suck eggs here, we all do that, okay? And we need to establish clear directives or objectives, and yes, that happens in 80% of the meetings that people go to these days. But where it starts to then get a little bit fluffy, if you like, or a little bit cloudy, is the use of data to support the conversations. And a lot of the time when I sit in meetings are all geared around gut feel, expectation, what people are feeling at the moment. They're not looking at real data that's happening now to drive that conversation point. Using problem solving to drive actions. Well, again, a lot of companies in our experience see this as being a mid-term objective. So problem solving and driving actions seems to happen at a weekly meeting and not a daily meeting. Well, guys, if we're doing short interval control and every hour or 2 hours we're at the cutting edge of the facility, working with the guys on the shop floor, why can't we drive action then? It should be easy to do. And point 5, driving action. That's the key thing for me about any meeting, is that we should have actions come out the back of a meeting that allow us to make improvements. So, and if we can't fix a problem because it's a nutty gnarly issue that takes a little bit more effort or might need a bit more structure, we can escalate that then into a rapid improvement workshop, for example. So we're now in a position where I'm working in a workshop environment. We're in a position that we've got more control, more focus. We can do even detailed analysis. So we've got 2 different tiers of how we can conduct these meetings. Okay, so action management is key for us, and that's one of the key drivers of our engagement with InVMA and the ThingWorks platform. We're damn good at getting data out of machines and presenting data back to people. The bit that seemed to be struggling, or organisations were struggling with, is the way that we manage actions off the data. And quite often I would get a call from clients saying that, the system's great, Si, we've got all this information, but I've not really seen an improvement to my efficiency. What's going wrong? And when you start to dig a little bit deeper, the reality is that there's no actions being driven from the data. The meeting structures may be in place, but they're not being governed by the data that's being presented in a real-time manner now, or coming directly from the PLCs. So hopefully there, guys, I've demonstrated to you the concept, a very quick overview of how we got to understanding the gap we needed to close as a business and why we engage with InVMA and ThingWorks. What I'm going to do now is give you a product demo of the solution that we came up with. Okay, so we're now in a position where we can see the screen of the product within Gemba, and this is our ThingWorks product that we've developed with ThingWorks and InVMA, and it allows us to have effective meetings and real-time meetings on the shop floor or in a meeting room where we can actually single-click get to root cause analysis. So the screen I've got in front of me at the moment is a OEE data screen. As I've said, all the data being analysed or being captured and generated is your data on your facility, within the Gemba server on your facility, and we are packaging that information in a report fashion that then gets passed through the ThingWorks platform that allows us to have this interactive screen and view. It's web-based, so guys, so you log in to your web server or your Internet Explorer, and you can then see this data. And in this example, I'm going to focus on Site 1, Area 1. And we can see on the right-hand side, I've got OEE by asset. And I've got all the machines in that area, and the colour coding, red being bad, amber being it's not quite on target, but it's near, and green being it's on target. All these elements are configured within the Gemba solution on the on-site version. And we can now see the OEE breakdown, so the components of OEE, availability, performance, quality, and overall OEE. And then underneath that, we've got the OEE trends. So that in its own right isn't giving us anything to fix, but what it is giving me, I can clearly see I've got 3 machines that are underperforming on their efficiency as to where we want them to be. So I'll just pick on one of these machines now. Let's go on machine number 3. And by clicking on machine number 3, hopefully you would have noticed that the breakdown OEE now has moved to filter only the data relating to machine number 3, and the same with the OEE component trend underneath that. Now, when we're looking at the information, we can see that my biggest issue is the red bar being performance. It's at 74.7% at the moment. And I also have an issue with availability, although it's amber, which is telling me that it's within the expected limits at the moment. So I just want to show you how we can actually drill a little bit deeper into this now with a few clicks of a button. And it's all about driving dynamic meetings, guys. So I'm going to click on availability. The form then resets itself, and it's now giving me again all of my information of the machines. It's giving me my top 5 downtime issues for all of those assets and the overall trend of those issues. But if I click on machine 3 again, my Pareto now is the top 5 of the issues relating to that machine and that machine only. And my trend is a summary of those top 5. And if I click on the individual issue, any one of them, it will then filter the trend to a rolling 12-week of that single issue. Now, what benefit does that give me? Well, straight away, I can start to understand if I've got a problem that is continuous, i.e. it's repeatable, it's happening continuously. I can see if a problem is a one-off. I can also see if it's getting better or worse. So from this one page alone, I can really understand where my opportunity sits on driving improvements. And with a simple click of a button, I can create an action, and that action will be assigned to the relevant people so that we can make people accountable and make sure that we are driving actions and we're not just talking about it in the meeting. So I will create an action in a moment for you so you can see how that works. But I just want to keep on this thread, if you like, of analysing the data. At any point, we can click on any one of the assets and it will rejig itself. The next thing to consider is performance. So this is often the element that's overlooked when we're looking at OEE. So people normally focus on availability because it's a tangible, it's something real, the machine isn't running, so there's a problem. When we get to performance, it's more of a theoretical, what should the machine do and how can we fix that? So if I click on the performance bar, it then again gives me my performance by assets. I can now see I've got all the products that are being run on these machines over the last 12 weeks. And I've got a trend of that information underneath. But again, if I focus on one of the machines, I can see that this machine ran one product, and that's Glenfiddich 12. And if I can click on Glenfiddich 12, it actually gives me the expected units per minute versus the delivered or actual units per minute while that product was running on that one machine. Okay? So we can now start to understand how well does some of the product perform. Just to give you an example of that, I've clicked on a well-performing machine, C1. I've got 2 products that have run on that. If I click on 15, you can see that as a rule it is below its standard, but there's been a couple of spikes where it's beat the standard. And if I click on Glenfiddich 40, you can see that that product never hits its standard. So again, I could create an action on the fly that would help promote performance issues. Next time that Glenfiddich 40 is on machine C1, we will do an improvement activity to try and fix that issue or understand at least why we can't hit the expected run rates. And that's the key thing there. If I then click on the quality bar, this now gives me quality by the assets again. It then gives me the quality by the product, so I can now start to see the relationships between the different products that run down the different machines. And obviously we capture the quality issues that are being recorded and the overall quantity being rejected as a trend. So, for example, I will select on machine 3, one product, it's got the biggest issue is reject quantity, and if I click on that, it will then tell me or filter the actual units that have been produced, or sorry, lost for that reject reason. Now, obviously, with the data I've got coming through for this system at the moment, this product is the main reject reason, hence why the bar is just the one blue bar giving me the information for this trend chart. But again, we can drive action from this. So based on the 3 components of OEE, we've now been in a position where we could have raised 2 or 3 actions per bar, and I've now got a team of people that know they've got actions. So what happens with the actions? I'm going to create an action now. And let's say, for example, I'm doing a workshop on rapid improvement workshops or setup reduction. What I'm going to do here very quickly, understand the internal and external activities. Description, create a I and E analysis. So just a very quick description there, guys. It's just so you get an understanding for what we're trying to do. I'm going to create the originator to be me. So I'm creating this action, and I'm actually going to create this action for John. So when I create this action, John will actually get a message appear to him. We'll get a message appear to him that will tell him that I've added an action for him to work with, and he will get an email come through on his phone or on his PC, laptop, that will allow him to see what that action is. So I will assign a due date, and let's say for tomorrow, and I'm just going to create that action. And it's as simple as that, as creating an action on the fly. Now what happens to all those actions is if I go to my action management page, I'm now in a position where I've got a visibility of the actions. So I've got my organisation, I've got my title. So within the title, we can have many meetings. So I've got a general action management meeting, but then I've also got my rapid improvement workshop meeting. And if I click on that, we can now see that I've got 3 actions in there. There's an action that's 25% complete, and that is investigate current setup on M505. I've got video to complete changeover, and I've got understanding the internal and external activities that I've just created for John. And they're currently not being dealt with. They're sitting in the pending section of the screen, but very easily I can see what's going on. If I open up one of these actions, so the investigation of current setup on machine 5, I can double click that and I can see a history of all the comments that have been entered. So no setup sheet available. We need to create an SOP. Then I added in arrange a rapid improvement workshop for the next week, the 25th of September, meeting invites to follow. And then I've confirmed that I've invited 2 operators and 2 team leaders. Now, the beauty of this, guys, is that when I'm adding these comments, they send a notification through to the group, to the meeting group. So if I just cancel that for a second, I've just sent John a meeting request, sorry, an action. And if I click on that understand internal and external, I can see that I've got a comment in there, engage James Cook to do this, will be ready by the 20th of the 9th. So John picked that email up, he's responded to the email, and you didn't hear it, guys, but my phone actually buzzed off for me to tell me that I'd had a meeting, or sorry, an action update, and I can now see that. So we've got a full history of what's going on with these actions until we get them to a point of close. The point I would like to make out here, though, guys, that I could add a comment to this now saying, okay, thanks, but then we get into the realms of it being like a chat message board, and you can do that by all means, but then you would lose the potency of getting these updates if you've got constantly stream of information coming through. Now, one of the reasons that we chose to do notifications via email is that a lot of us have got smartphones these days, and as your phone picks up this incoming messaging, it flashes on your banner screen on your smartphone. And it's been proven over the years that we've got very conditioned to this form of communication. So many of us have got LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. There's a wealth of different platforms out there these days, and they all react on a similar basis, and that is that you get to preview the message on the front of your phone without actually going into your phone. And over the years, as we've been absorbing this, we've actually conditioned ourselves quite heavily now to understand when we read a message on the flash screen, it does actually get absorbed into your subconsciousness. And then the next time you've got 5 minutes where you might be quickly catching up on some emails, having a cup of coffee or going for your lunch break, you will naturally then go to your phone and start looking at the information that was presented to you, whether that's a comment on Facebook or whether it's a comment that an action's been completed. It's exactly the same principle. But the other thing that we quickly pick up on as people and individuals is that if John hasn't sent any updates out on his actions for a week or so, you very quickly start to realise that you're not getting that communication chain from John, and it becomes very apparent. And it's then your opportunity as the project manager or as the meeting owner to actually get in touch with John and give him a gentle, persuasive nudge. Ask him to update his actions if he's not doing that, and just make sure that people are really committing to the actions that are being provided. And that is how we actually start to drive efficiency changes and improvements. We're in a position where we're constantly drip feeding information, we're making sure people are actioning, and you can now see that John has actually moved the understanding the internal and external activities across to the 25% complete. Now, obviously our objective is to get all the actions to the right-hand side, which is complete, and then when you have your weekly meeting, you can then close off those and they disappear off the board. And the idea of that is being that we can then start to understand root cause. Have we really fixed the problem? Are we seeing the correct trends on the data? Because very quickly I can click back onto the OEE data and I can understand, are the trends getting better or worse? So hopefully if John's done a good enough job there, we'll start to sit down with downward trends in changeover. Another good point to talk about here, guys, is the attachments on my left-hand side of the screen towards the bottom. How many times have you been in a meeting where you've asked somebody for a picture or for a document and they've said, oh, I haven't brought it with me, or oh yeah, I'll send it to you later? Well, the whole idea of the attachments is as we do in these meetings and actions, the team can attach the documents to the meeting structure. So in this example, I have attached a view of a brainstorming session with a client. If I click on view and open, you will see that it will actually then present me the photo I took of the problem definition qualification board that I was doing with a client when we were doing a brainstorming session. So, straight away you've got information readily available, and it doesn't have to be a picture. It could be a PDF, it could be a Word document, and it could be that I'd asked John to create a new SOP for the changeover, and we were going to review it in our next weekly meeting. We haven't got to wait for John to get it printed off for us or to remember to bring his laptop. It's there and readily available. And if you're conducting regular meetings, as per my previous slides where we're talking about shortening for control, we're talking about daily meetings and weekly meetings, these systems help police themselves. We very quickly get into a position where, you know what, this Gemba data we've been gathering for years is actually now driving an improvement because we're driving actions and completing actions. And that in essence, what we've created using ThinWorks with the InVMA team. And the beauty that we've got all this data pumping into within Gemba is being now presented on a Thin client. We're now in a position where these meetings can be taken place in any location realistically. As long as you've got your login details and the right security access, you can get to view your data and very quickly navigate to areas within the business, and understand what your key issues are in that business. So guys, that's the product that we've developed, and that's the demonstration complete. So what I'd like to do now is pass you back over to John.
Thank you, Simon. So just a quick summary from where we were with that is that what we did as InVMA with Gemba is we took what the data that we're already getting from the line using Kepware and sensors directly, and then presenting that data in the dashboard and using action management that you saw. So you saw that what we created there. So what ThingWorx is doing there is using the elements of it, which is the rapid application development platform, to take the ideas that we're having and turn them into something that can be used remotely. But how do you get started? So what I'd like to go through now is really, if you think about it, and it really starts where we were at, which is, do you have the right strategy and plan to get started with the Internet of Things and the Industrial Internet of Things? And really that's answering the question why. What is the immediate problem potentially that you're trying to solve now? Or where does this put you strategically with what you're trying to do with your overall strategy and plan for your business? The other question then as well is, the second thing is, do we really understand the technology? What is it enabling us to do? And what are those technologies, and which is the best one for us? Next question you could probably ask yourself is, do we have the right people and skills to be able to take this forward? Some people are looking at this from the point of view of saying, well, at the moment, the IoT seems to be a hammer running around looking for a nail. And if you've done the first two steps right, where you've turned it around the other way and said, where have we got an opportunity? And where have we got the benefit to come from? Then you're reversing the conversation. It's all about the value. Then once you've got there is, do you have the right people and skills can do that? And one of the questions you have is, once you've got that and you're starting to get the data, how can we actually leverage this data? How can we make the most of it? And how can we use the data that is trapped in the silos, in our machines, in our processes around the organisation to trigger work and improve the efficiency and effectiveness of what it is that we're doing? And the key question here is also, how can we manage to get to this value? Can we get to it quickly? And that's where the use of a platform, the IoT application enablement platform like ThingWorx, can really help you do that. So probably a bizarre thing to say, but actually helps you to fail fast and fail cheaply. You can give it a go, you can see what that's telling you, connect up to other machines, and then see if that's giving you the benefits that you're not, and fail fast, fail cheaply. But also then when the successes do come, that will then help you invest in the further successes to come in the future. So that's how we will get started. Start from where you want to be, answer the question why, certainly before you get into the how, and then also with the who. And what we can offer is a portfolio to help you accelerate the expansion of the expansion and use of this technology. Right from the early stages where you create the strategy, so working in some cases with partners like Gemba, to understand where you're going to get the value from implementing this type of technologies. Also by showcasing how other companies are using the technology. We can then very rapidly get you into a proof of concept. And so we identify where the biggest business value for you is, and then prove that we can, using the technology, get to a business case and a proof that this can actually work. And we can use ThingWorx and ThingWorx connectivity to enable you to do that. We can then go into a production pilot. And what we mean by that is taking that and saying, right, let's try that now on a wider scale. And let's get this into a production environment that we're happy that people can start to use in anger. This can mean that we can use our workshops we can accelerate ThingWorx prototyping, use the agile methodology to build this with you as we go, enabling you to comment on the application, enabling us to change it as we build it for you and with you. And then finally we scale it for production. So we enable, and this is when it goes into full production, where we ensure that connectivity and the security that we designed in at the start is there available for you. And then we can scale it out to production. And then clearly, if you're doing this on one factory site or indeed one process, then we can look to work with you to expand and optimize. And there's different delivery methods as well, right the way from we as InVMA can do it all for you from concept through to final production, right the way back to we can help you and guide you and train you to go and do this yourselves with the support of some of our partners like Gemba. And we can do this because PTC and their ThingWorx platform is the market-leading IoT platform provider globally. It was declared the IoT leader in January 2017 by ISG and the Experton Group. It's been identified as a market leader, and it finds itself in most of the, indeed all of the vendor and analyst documentation and reports. It finds itself generally in the top right quadrant. And the value of using InVMA and PTC ThingWorx together is that we can drive and allow you to experiment with the opportunities that Industrial Internet of Things provide. So I'll open up to the audience. Has anyone got any questions? Please, please present your questions. You can add them in at the bottom if you'd like. Okay, so we've had a question which is to Simon, which is Simon, what sort of savings can people expect from doing this type of implementation?
Okay, so typically we'd normally expect to see a 5 to 10% increase in efficiency when you first turn a solution like Gemba's on. And then a sustainable change, we'd be looking to get around about a 22% uplift of efficiency. It is obviously very much dependent on the process, the number of machines or assets that we're connecting to, and also the culture within the business itself. So using the action management process and meeting structures, and with a good rich data flow, you can typically see anything up to a 22% uplift. So yeah, it's a good question. From a financial perspective, that varies massively upon companies, and we do offer a return on investment analysis when we do follow-up meetings. As you already said about understanding the opportunity within the client, one of our outputs from that would be what we feel 1% efficiency uplift would be worth to that company.
Great, thanks, Simon. Got another question here, which is interested to say that you thought the connectivity was easy. What makes you say that?
Well, I think over the years there's been a big drive around technology and making data available. So if you like, the drive to the Internet of Things, it's making information readily available, and a lot of machine manufacturers and a lot of companies have put a lot of infrastructure in place for that. One of those things also being the fact that we use Kepware. Kepware is an open model that allows us to talk to PLCs relatively easily, and with the right switches turned on, you can get a wealth of information out of these machines. So I think 10 years ago maybe, or 5-10 years ago, there was a big push on getting data to be available, and that's where, if you like, it's now launched the Internet of Things, in the sense that we're a data-rich environment now. Actioning it's a difficult bit.
Yeah, there you go. So another question here for you, Simon, is that if you look at the elements of the Internet of Things, we talked at the start about the collapsing of the price of connectivity and sensors, etc. Are there any sort of little secret tips and whatever that you found that have helped people improve the production flow? Is there any of this new hardware or anything that you're using at the moment that enables you to do that more quickly?
It's a good question, and I think the main tip I would push out there would be communication is a two-way street. And while you can now buy purchase sensors and PLCs and connectivity very cheap, I would always recommend a client to invest a little bit on also display, so that can put information back to the end user. So if we're working with an operator or a team of operators on a production line and we're focused on performance, yes, we can get the counts quickly off the process, and we can understand the units per minute against the product that they're working on, against the plan that they're working against. But just presenting a simple view back to the operator to say whether you're having a good day or a bad day, or a good hour or a bad hour, speaks volumes in the way that they drive their own efficiencies. So I would always say it's a two-way street.
Okay, that's great. Thanks for the insight. Got a question here about security. So how secure is the product? Maybe I'll take that. We're finding that a lot of manufacturing companies, particularly after recent attacks, are going down a route of closing off their industrial networks, indeed to their own corporate networks, and segregating them, so that their industrial network becomes an island. It seems very, very counterintuitive when you're looking at what we're trying to do with the industrial Internet of Things. And it's probably a misnomer, actually, in the words of the Internet, particularly in the cases that we're doing. We're trying to avoid having stuff on the Internet at all, actually. We're using secure VPN tunnels, etc., to present this sort of stuff, and only have the Internet side available to the development, the presentation of the data itself. But we also use a product as well called Device Authority, which we can use to secure from end to end, and that also does a lot of network and device authentication. So particularly in the industrial environment, it's around, is this machine a machine I recognise on my network and one that I should be talking to and allowed to talk to each other? So we can do that on network. The other thing that we do, as I say, is around secure tunneling. And there are lots of other elements around security that we can do and take you through. In some national secure infrastructure, i.e. infrastructure that we can't expose to the internet because it forms part of the national infrastructure, we also are able to do fully on-premise kind of solutions as well, where it doesn't actually touch the internet. Or indeed, we can segregate that through physical segregation and the use of good old-fashioned serial connectivity, so there's no internet connection to the secure, to the nationally important infrastructure. To avoid it that way. So there are many ways of us helping security, but again, as I think I said, as we're going through, designing security right from the start. Yeah. Okay. I think that's it. I haven't got any more questions that are coming through. I'm conscious of time, so James.
Yep, so thank you very much, John, and thank you, Simon. I think it's very clear some of the amazing work that Gemba and InVMA are doing together and the value that it's going to bring. What I understand now, and what's being shown in the next slide, is I believe that there is a potential offering here for our attendees as well. So John and Simon, would you like to expand here?
Sure. So thanks, James. So yeah, so from for attendees and those people that listen to this video, Simon and myself are very happy with ourselves or one of our team to come and sit with you, work with you to go through how the industrial Internet of Things could affect your business, and particularly around the area of improving production line overall equipment effectiveness and efficiency. Then we can certainly help there. So if you'd like, please reach out to us, but also you can book online here, but also James Cook will also be reaching out to you to see if that's something of interest to you. And we look forward to meeting and working with you.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you.